On part 3 of this Tears of the Kingdom challenge run, I arrive in Zora's domain to find that Ganondorf has changed the region's water source to Flint, Michigan, and as a result it is now covered in toxic sludge. While Zora's domain is far enough removed from the northern United States that it can't give me lead poisoning, sludge restricts movement heavily, which can leave me very vulnerable if a group of enemies catch me in it. I decide to try and save some time by just talking to Sidon immediately instead of going to the capital first as intended, and the game rewards me for my cleverness by just making me go there anyway. In the capital, I find that the statue of Mipha at the center of the town area has been replaced with one of Link riding Sidon, which I'm sure will in no way be taken out of context by internet artists. After being yo-yoed to the capital and back, Sidon tells me that the key to solving the Zora's problems is solving a riddle, which in this case involves getting to a floating island above him and shooting through a circle of rocks with a special arrow made partially out of his dad's dead skin. I make use of a very conveniently placed hot air balloon to reach the floating island, and open up a new pathway to the sky. Before continuing with the main progression, I decide to take a detour to improve my survival odds. My first stop is to help Zora who is being suffocated by the sludge in order to grab his spear. Despite the rather paltry base 7 attack power, this will be one of the most useful tools in my kit for the upcoming dungeon. Spears are already one of, if not the, best weapon types in the game with their incredible range and very fast hit rate, and Zora weapons gain double attack power when wet, which, as you might imagine, is relatively often in the water region. I merge the spear with a black Hinox horn to boost its attack power further, and wind up with a 46 power spear, which should trounce just about anything the game can throw at me at this point. I then briefly head to the depths in order to grab Auto Build, a power-up that will let me expend Zollnite in order to construct items that I have previously built. The depths are a massive cave network beneath the surface of Hyrule, much of it covered in a layer of thick raspberry jam that will deplete your max health temporarily if you stand in it too long. It also has some of the toughest enemies in the game, which will almost certainly kill me if I attempt to fight them. Because of this, I just mostly sprint straight forward to the target, and manage to grab it with only a few hiccups. I ignore the researchers begging me to fix their vehicles with my newfound power, because that initiates a boss fight at this point, and I really don't potentially want to lose another life. I finally return to Sidon, who is in the middle of an impromptu marriage counseling session with his fish fiancée. Suddenly, a sludge monster shows up, and I accidentally almost burn myself alive after forgetting the shield I have equipped has a flamethrower attached. I get stuck in the sludge and barely survive a direct hit with a quarter of a heart left, but still manage to kill it and remain at only one death. There's a short lead up to the water temple directly afterwards, which mostly consists of bombing walls to increasingly flood a cave system in order to gain enough height to reach a switch to the top. But I'm lazy, so I just decide to skip all of that by assembling a hover bike and flying over everything with my newly acquired auto build. After that, a magic waterfall appears, and Sidon, instead of helping me swim up it, instead decides to be a massive jerk and tells me to fuck off until I can find some special armor. I begrudgingly help his fiancée turn an endangered species of fish into a new shirt, and then I join him at the top. This is where we find out that Hyrule is apparently located on a very tiny planet, as its mass is so small that ascending even a couple hundred meters is enough to cause gravity's effect on the player to diminish significantly. This moon gravity is very annoying for precise platforming, but is very helpful for running by combat, which is overall a plus for me, as just about every regular enemy here will kill me in a single attack if I'm not at 100% HP. I run through this area with a few close calls, but still reaching the end of the section without a casualty. At this point, the game intends for you to build a plane and launch yourself diagonally over to engage in a pretty dangerous combat encounter with several tough enemies. However, I decide to take advantage of the moon gravity and simply launch the plane straight upwards, giving myself enough height to simply glide over all the enemies and avoid the risk outright. This leads us into the actual water temple. A voice from God tells us that while I have been good enough to be rescued from divine beast hell, I have not fully atoned from my sins from the previous game, and so I must remain in press 5 switches in a boss fight purgatory until I am forgiven and can return to the blissful meadows of traditional Zelda dungeon design. In this case, pressing switches means using Sidon's power to activate water wheels. Unfortunately, Sidon's AI is cripplingly stupid and will often just stand there while a timer is ticking, which does make positioning somewhat important. Outside of this element though, the dungeon is very easy, and I get myself set on fire a couple times in order to help entertain myself. After activating all the panels, I mean turning all the water wheels, the boss shows up. This boss hits significantly less hard than any of the regular enemies in the temple, and despite Sidon's stupid AI being as utterly useless as possible, I managed to kill it, with my 46 power Zora Spear doing the lion's share of the work. This results in the portal to Flint's water supply being closed, and Zora's domain being saved. We're then treated to a flashback cutscene that establishes the backstory for the game, where in the distant past, Ganondorf beats everyone up and is only stopped thanks to Goat Dimitri engaging in the world's longest timer scam. Sidon then grants me the power of the Sidon Stand, which will be useful for when I need a beat shield later on.